Sitting with people in their pain isn't easy. And I am learning more and more that it is a necessary skill and it's like a muscle that we all need to develop. And if you see yourself as spiritual, loving, caring, compassionate, or empathic, being able to build this muscle for others, I believe, is so, so important. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I was in an abusive relationship with a covert narcissist. And being in that relationship really destroyed my sense of self. It messed with my confidence. It messed up my faith. Like to this day, 3 years out of that relationship, I'm still uncertain where I stand when it comes to the things that I believe in. I have my core values and I do have core beliefs. And even with the core beliefs, I still doubt them sometimes. And it's a core belief. So it's hard to explain that to people, because when you think of a core belief, you think like, this is what I absolutely believe in. I'll never question it. You know, I stand by it. And that's not who I am anymore. I have changed on numerous levels because of that relationship that I was in. And for the longest time, I kept saying to myself, there is no reason for me to have gone through this. There's no reason for me to have gone through this pain, through this hell on earth. And when it came to my ex, and when I would talk to different spiritual leaders and even different therapists, the two answers that I got most of the time from spiritual people was that Mike and I had past karma that we were clearing up. We had been through all these past lives together and, you know, yada, yada, yada. And in my heart of hearts, I know that's not true. Like, I can feel that that's not the case. And when it came to different therapists, they were telling me that I was codependent. That ticked me off. And I fought back on that. I'm like, I am definitely not codependent. And so I pushed back on that in a big way. And then, of course, there was also the whole like, well, you know, inner child wounds and the way you grew up, and we all seek out our parents in these relationships. And that didn't sit well with me either. And I've been through enough to where I trust my intuition now. Like, I trust what I'm feeling, and I trust that I have a really good level of self-awareness. And I hope that you have that for yourself too. I hope that you're building self-awareness, because there's a lot of gaslighting that happens not just in relationships, but also in the mental health field and with the people that we may trust when it comes to our spiritual walk, people we trust for spiritual advice. So building self-awareness is really important, because when you build self-awareness, you start to trust your intuition. And I feel like that is key to so many things in our lives. So I finally realized that there is a purpose behind what I'm going through. And it's not at all what I thought, and it's not at all what any spiritual teacher or guru or psychic or authority has taught me. It's not something that any therapist or psychologist has been able to tap into. So I'm going to share my insights with you, both the personal ones as they relate to me and the ones that I believe relate to everybody across the board. So I'll start with the second one, how it relates to everybody across the board, because not all of you are that interested in my personal life, and that's okay. And I don't want to burden you with that. So for years, I have always asked God to use me. I have asked divine source, the universe, whatever is out there, to use me to help others. And during my first 10 years on this spiritual path, I was neck deep in things like the law of attraction and manifesting and thinking positive. And in my heart of hearts, I knew that there was something off with the way that we were all being taught to manifest, the way that we were being taught to use the law of attraction. One of the problems that I had with it was this whole idea that you have to be positive all the time. And if you were in the self-help arena or spiritual arena between I would say 2005 to probably 2020, that was a huge message, and you'll still see it on other channels, on YouTube when it comes to people who are manifesting. Thankfully, there does seem to be a lot more balance now, whereas before it used to be just like think positive, good things will come to you if you think positive. And now, even people like Rhonda Burns are flipping that script. They're recognizing that that's not correct. I am so grateful that that light is being shown, because that idea that if you're positive, only positive will come to you is actually very damaging. And if I'm honest, it's one of the things that I believe ruined my life a few years ago, because when I got involved with Mike, not only did I believe he was my soulmate because of all the synchronicities we were going through, and just I had actually been predicting him in my life for 10 years. Like, I had visions and dreams of this guy, but I didn't know who he was. So there was all this stuff leading up to Mike before I met him. And I really believed that, this was my soulmate. This was the person that I was going to take on the world with, and I mean, not literally, of course, but I saw us being by each other's side through thick and thin. And even when I started to notice things that didn't make sense in him, things that gave me pause, I kind of let them slide. I took note. So let's start with that. I did take note. I didn't ignore them. I took note. But the green flags seemed to be more prevalent than the red flags. And I took note of those things, but I also believed that this man was meant for me. And you can ask his exes. His exes all thought that same way when they met him, because he just has this way of love bombing and mirroring and paying attention and looking at you like you're the only person in the world. It's very similar to Joe Goldberg from the Netflix series You. If you haven't seen that, highly recommend it. It's such a good show. And it speaks to the truth of what sociopaths actually look like, how they behave on the outer world, and how they can be behind closed doors. Of course, Joe murders people, and to my knowledge, my ex didn't do that, so at least he's got that going for him, as far as I know. So I believed that the universe would protect me from people like him, because I had been manifesting love. I knew I was a good person with flaws, and I had made some mistakes, and I had hurt some people, not intentionally, but I do have ADHD, and with that there's emotional dysregulation and just like this whole host of issues that make me interpret things differently than what they are sometimes. And so that has been a big problem in friendships and some relationships and other things in my life. And so now that I'm aware of it, I'm much more cautious of how I approach these different things in life, right? But at the time when I met Mike, I had been working on manifesting love for years. In fact, I had an affirmation that was, I am in a happy, healthy relationship with a wonderful man who loves me. And I would sit down and I would journal, what does a wonderful man look like? What does it mean to be in a healthy relationship, right? So because I believed in the law of attraction and manifesting so much, I did not believe that the universe would even allow anyone like Mike into my atmosphere. And boy, was I wrong. And one of the problems also with the law of attraction and manifesting, and just the general feel good, high vibration messages in the spiritual field overall is that it's important for you to ride that wave of positivity. Anything that makes you feel upset or sad or low vibration doesn't belong in your life. And that goes for people, right? So if you have people in your life who are bringing you down, who are a constant bummer, you need to separate yourself from them, right? Because they're bringing you down, they're tearing down your energy. And so they shouldn't be in your atmosphere. And that's what we're taught. And I blew up some of my friendships because I followed that advice. There were people in my life, 5 years ago and earlier, that were going through very difficult things that I didn't understand. And me being, super spiritual guru who believed in the law of attraction. And even though I had a problem with this whole positivity approach and everything, I made the mistake of believing other people's philosophies over my own, which meant that even though I had a problem with this message and I could feel there was something wrong with it, I chose to dismiss my own intuition and follow the advice and guidance of other people who'd been on the spiritual path longer than I had, who also seemed to be more successful in all areas, right? They weren't struggling the way that I was, so they must have been doing something right. And looking back, I realized how very nearsighted that belief is, or not nearsighted. Anyways, I notice now how, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? I just notice now how that's wrong. I notice how that's wrong. I notice how it's kind of tone deaf. And there were people who were hurting that I was just like, I can't be around you anymore. Like, this is too much. You're not even doing anything to try to change your situation. Like, I can't be friends with you because you don't care enough about yourself. Like, it was terrible. And I thought I was giving them tough love. And for some people, for two people at least, I kind of was. And me telling them that I couldn't tolerate them anymore. Oh, I hate that I even said that. But me saying that and basically releasing them and saying, you don't care enough about yourself, so why should I? It did, I don't want to say snatch them out of it, but they did stop to really think about that, and they did make progressive and meaningful changes in their life. So it did snap them out of the loop. But it also wasn't my place to say things like that to them. And while I can point to two people and say it was what they needed to hear, how many other people did I talk to that way that just sent them down in a spiral further? So I do carry some guilt and shame for that because I know better now. And the reason I know better now is because of what I went through with Mike and really the aftermath. So here's what I've learned from my personal situation. Compassion and empathy are actually missing in the spiritual field more than people want to admit. We are not good at being empathic. We're not good at sitting with people in their pain. And I'm including myself in this because I wasn't good at it either. Even as a people pleaser, I had my limit. And now that I've been struggling for 3 years, it's really been longer than that because there was the struggle in the relationship, right? So it's been 5 years of me just being stripped of my identity and who I am, and only recently starting to feel like myself again. Probably over the course of 8 months is when I start feeling human again, but still battling depression and things like that. I have experienced how awful people can be when you are processing long-term trauma, when you are processing PTSD, when you are in the thick of it, a lot of people don't want to show up for you, and they might show up for you for a short amount of time. They won't show up for you for the get-go. They won't be there for the long run. And what's really sad is if you're in a tough situation and you're doing everything you can just to get by. So you're in survival mode, you're praying, you're trying to meditate, but your mind won't let you. You're doing the best you can with a nervous system that is just whacked and off the charts. And you're doing everything you can to get back on your feet, but the rug keeps getting pulled out of you, and you have someone who you think is safe, who you go to, and then they tell you basically, look, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You're too negative, you're petty, you're this, you're that. All you do is complain. It's shocking to your system. And I had that happen. I had that happen with two friends. And one of them, she had been a support system to me for a couple of years. And I had listened to her. It's not like it was one-sided. Like if she had problems, she came to me too. We spoke about deep things and we had fun together too. So it's not like all we did was trauma dump. Like we had a lot of good times together as well. But last year I was going through something that was tremendously difficult because I've been going through tremendously difficult things for, going on 3 years. And last year I had job opportunities that fell through that seemed like a done deal. I had 2 abusive bosses that I was working with. I had a terrible, terrible roommate. There was just so much that was going on. And it was like I couldn't get to a place where I felt safe. And everything in my life was trauma. It absolutely was. And there were moments of light within that. But for the most part, last year and 2022 were terrible years for me. And so my good friend, someone who I thought was my best friend, got on the phone with me, and completely unprovoked, she just started laying into me and telling me that her era of being a people pleaser is over, and she was standing up for herself now, and she didn't want to talk to me anymore. She wanted our conversations to be more productive. Now, keep in mind, this was my best friend, and we used to say that we were our ride or die friends, and we used to talk about the importance of community. And here she was coming at me because my life was too difficult for her. She didn't want to sit with me in empathy anymore. And so instead of her being able to have enough self-awareness to realize that that was a her issue, that she didn't have the strength to sit with me in empathy when I was going through so much pain. And just so you know, she was fine. She was fine. She had a couple of difficult things going on in her life, but she also had family. She had friends. She had a boyfriend that was basically paying for her lifestyle. She was fine, and I was not, because I was in poverty. I don't have a family connection. I don't have family looking out for me. I don't have a partner that looks after me. I am very, very alone in this world. And yes, I have friends and acquaintances, but they have their own lives. I don't have anyone super close to me. And she was the person that I trusted more than anyone else. And so when she said all these terrible things to me over the course of 20 minutes, I was just silent, and I didn't say anything back except for I don't know what to say. And I think she was waiting for an apology. But what was weird was that she wasn't mad at me because of anything I had done to her. It's not like she said, you said this about my child, or you said this mean thing about me, or I know that you don't really support my desire to be a spiritual influencer. Like, she couldn't say anything like that because nothing like that would be true. She was mad at me because my life was hard. And when she asked me how I was, or when we talked on the phone, I would be honest with her about what I was dealing with. And that is not empathy. That could be several other things. It can be compassion fatigue. It could be that, she also suspects that she's ADHD. So this could be her emotional dysregulation. But again, she lacked the self-awareness to realize that that was a her issue. And if she needed a break from me, which she had needed before, that's all she needed to say. And what was weird was we were kind of in the midst of a break during that time when she just called me. And I have my theories as to what was really underneath all of that. I don't think she was really mad at me. I think that I was just a scapegoat. I think she was mad at other people. And I can guarantee that with me not in her life, she's probably still feeling upset about other things. She's probably still irritated and depressed and struggling with heavy emotions that have nothing to do with me because I'm not in her life anymore, right? So what I've learned from that experience and from what I've been through with a handful of other acquaintances and just what I've been through over the past 3 years is that people are not good at empathy. People are not good at empathy. And the spiritual community is especially bad at it because we want to put a spiritual band-aid or a mantra or an affirmation and send people on their way. Like when I first got out of my relationship with Mike, and I was really struggling. Oh my God, I was crying every day. I was bawling sometimes several times a day. And just to be clear, when I was in that relationship, I was crying every day. I was bawling because I felt trapped, because I was being disrespected, because Mike didn't treat me as someone he loved. He treated me most of the time with apathy. He would still say good morning to me and say, good morning, beautiful, greet me with a kiss. But as far as the rest of the day went, he was just doing his own life. Like, I don't know why this man wanted to be in a relationship. Well, I do know why. He's actually looking for someone to constantly serve him and validate him and praise him. And once that starts to fade, he's not good at relationships. He can't put the work in. So, anyways, there were a lot of underhanded things that he was doing, things that I still find out about to this day. Like 3 years later, I still find out about some of the stuff he pulled, and it is shocking and it is sad because it's more and more validation that this is a man who he didn't love me. And that does hurt, because I loved that man so much. And so when I left him, I was really in a bad state. Like oh man, my heart was just ripped into shreds. And I was doing everything I could to heal, but you can't heal from something like that quickly. You can't. And keep in mind, I didn't really have a lot of close friends. I was struggling financially. I don't have family. I was trying to figure out so many things on my own, and it was rough. It was hard. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, and she was like, well, a lot of this is just mindset, right? Like you just need to stop thinking about Mike. Like you just need to start listening to 406 hertz music or whatever. And I was like, well, maybe she's right, so I did. I started listening to different binaural beats and different hertz, different levels of hertz, and it didn't fix anything. Like I said, it's like putting a Band-Aid on it. But Band-Aids at least stop the bleeding. That's not what this was doing, And I was trying to reach out to different therapists, and the type of therapist that I needed, I couldn't afford. Like it was just difficult. And it's kind of like being tossed out into the ocean, and people throw you life rafts, but they don't let you onto the boat. Or maybe they do let you onto their boat temporarily, but when you start to voice that you're so thirsty and you have these sunburns and you have these welts from being out in the ocean, they get tired of hearing about your pain. They don't want to help anymore, so they throw you back in the ocean. That is unfortunately what we are doing with people who are in severe pain in spiritual and self-help circles. Because the truth is, we are all limited in how much we can do for ourselves, and community is important. And we need more people who have stronger empathy and who are willing to build up that skill. That's what we need. And I do believe that empathy and compassion are the true love languages. You know, we always hear about love language being words of affirmation and acts of service and blah, blah, blah. No, it is empathy, it is compassion, it is respect. And when you hold those things for other people, you will naturally move into words of affirmation and acts of service, innocent physical touch. Because that's what true love and empathy does. It makes you able to hold more space and awareness for what someone's going through and respond accordingly. So, that said, I believe that the universe allowed me to have this experience, not because I have some inner child wounds that needed to be healed, not because now that I was in this relationship with Mike, I knew what I absolutely didn't want. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how much I hate when people say that to me. Like, I freaking hate it. Well, there was a lesson in this for you. No, the lesson actually wasn't in that relationship. It was after, because like I said, my prayer for years has been, God, help me. I want to help other people. Help me help other people. And through this experience, and I had to experience it for myself, I had to experience the depth of betrayal from close friends in spiritual communities to understand how big of a problem this actually is, because I didn't see it before, right? I'd kind of been protected from it. And so now I know. So now I know. So now the red flag has gone up. The alarm has been rang. And I understand now that empathy and compassion are missing long term, because we don't know how to sit with each other in pain and just listen and not try to offer a solution and not push our views on what we think the healing timeline should be. And the reality is that some people go through things that are so horrific it changes them. Like, I'm changed, and I know people have been through worse things from me. I'm not trying to say that they haven't, you know. But there are people who have been through worse things. There are people who have been in relationships like mine a lot longer. You know, I left just 2 years shy of that relationship. I was like, I need to give myself a fighting chance. And it is so important to provide comfort, compassion, and space for people who are going through the healing process, because the healing process is heavy. I feel like the healing process is worse than being in the abusive relationship a lot of times, because your mind is starting to pull all the pieces together, and you also start waking up to how bad everything actually was. And when you're in it, you kind of go through this brain fog, like you're aware, but you're also blinded. And that is by design, so that you can survive it. Because when you're in the middle of something horrific and you see how horrific it is, you would probably be way too shocked to be able to do anything else. And sometimes the numbness, you may not be able to do much in the numbness, but you're not feeling the full capacity of it. And when you start healing, it's a different story. And as you're healing, the healing can take years. And during the healing process, you may have dreams, you may have flashbacks, you may have intrusive thoughts about this person that did these things to you. You may find that every day you wake up, and as you go about your day, suddenly you're having an imaginary argument with this person or something like that. And it's frustrating because you don't want to be in that loop either. And if you're traumatized, or if you've been through something really heavy, and I know I'm talking about relationship based, but this can be other things too. This can be that you had a terrible health diagnosis. You were in an accident. Someone you loved dearly passed away, and you don't know how to make amends with that. And they may have died a decade ago. There's some things that we just never get past completely. And so we learn how to carry that grief into other areas of our lives. And some days the grief is heavier and some days it's lighter. And as a spiritual community, and I don't even want to say spiritual community, as human beings who are witnessing the lives of others through hopefully the lens of love and compassion, we need to do a better job of being there for people in that experience. We need to start learning how to build our empathy muscles. We need to learn how to sit with people in compassion, and we need to learn that when someone is suffering, our opinions don't matter. So if someone is pouring their heart out to you and you're having judgments and you're having bad thoughts, that's not their business. They don't need to hear that from you. Your job is to recognize that those are your thoughts and you're responsible for how you choose to handle those later. You're responsible for how you're choosing to show up for this person who is in pain. And I would also say that it's important to do your best to see it through with them, because that person will probably eventually come out of the darkness and into the light, but it's not going to be on your time frame. And you don't get to decide what that looks like for them. You don't get to decide what their thought process and healing journey looks like. That's a really unfair projection to place on someone who has survived things that you may not understand. And even if you think you understand it, we have to remember that everyone's sensitivity, tolerance is different. So we can't always say or claim that we know precisely how someone's hurting and what their timeline for healing should be, or what they should be doing to seek out their healing, because everyone's journey is different. And if you can be a loving witness to that journey, I promise you, that is more healing for them than you trying to tell them how to live their lives or what their next step should be. And that said, yes, there are definitely times when giving advice is appropriate, when brainstorming with them on what their next step should be, especially if they're in a place of head fog where they can't make decisions for their own. I've been there. Like a few years ago, I kept making this joke where I kept saying, I just need someone who's not a cult leader to tell me what to do with my life. And while it was a joke, there was a lot of honesty in that. Like, I kind of meant it, because I was so in the fog that I didn't know what to do. And then unfortunately, there were people who were giving me advice that I listened to that I wish I hadn't, because their advice set me back on my healing journey. Their advice ended up costing me more money and putting me more in debt. And I forgive myself and I forgive them, because I know that they were just thinking about my best interest. And I also have to look back at that and have so much love and compassion for myself and remind myself, Nicole, you were going through so much and you were going through it alone. You were doing the best you can. And I am actually proud of you that you were able to make any decision and choice at all. Like, that was brave. So this is just a reminder that people will hurt for a long time, and it's not your job and it's not loving to try to push them through the healing process faster. It's actually quite cruel, and I know because I've been on the other end of it. And I think that you have too. I think a lot of people have. And yes, there's a time for tough love, but I don't think that time is as often as people think it is. I think that sugarcoating truth and being compassionate are usually the way to go. And keep in mind that I'm not talking about working with toxic personalities here. I'm not talking about how to deal with the dark triad or narcissist, because those people, they're a losing battle. They're never going to see things from your point of view, okay? I'm talking about people who are empathic, who are hurt, who are carrying a lot of pain with them, who you genuinely care about. So when you get involved with someone, friendship level or otherwise, who is going through something horrendous, I'm going to ask you this. Please see it through. Please see it through. Don't offer them a place to live in your home. and then after 3 months or 4 months realize that you don't want to live with them after all, and then kick them out when you know they have nowhere to go. That's cruel. Don't make it seem like you're a safe space for them, and then something happens in your life that changes, and suddenly you just decide you don't have time for them anymore. That's cruel. And there are ways to deal with that. If that's a legit thing, because life happens to all of us. You need to make sure that you're not making them feel like a burden. Try to see it through with them, because they need that. I needed that. I needed people to see me through on my journey, but so many people up and left, and it's discouraging, And a lot of people want to just paint me as someone who is toxic and crazy. And the truth is, like, I have complex PTSD and I'm better now. But during the first 2.5 years of leaving that relationship, I was not okay. And the last year I was in it, I was not okay, So it wasn't fair for people to expect me to behave like a normal, happy, functioning human being, like who I was before Mike, because I was in the depths of trauma and fear and survival. And I was reaching out to anyone who looked like a life raft. And there wasn't anything wrong with me doing that, right? So I don't know who this is for. I think that a lot of people who probably found this video can relate to what I'm saying, as far as we need more people who are compassionate long term, more people who are willing to see things through with us, more people who are willing to have patience. And hopefully, if you are someone who is in a position to help, and maybe you're fed up with a friend who's been going through a hard time, I hope that this video has given you a different point of view and has encouraged you to find the strength and the methods necessary so that you can hold more compassion and space for others, for the person you care about, but while also maintaining your own mental health as well, because you're important too. And I'm not trying to say you should tear down your boundaries. I am saying that if you need a break from someone, that you make sure you don't make it about them, because hurting people don't need to be made to feel as if they're a burden. And it's not fair to make them feel as if they're not healing enough, or as if they no longer get access to love because they're hurting. When people are hurting, they need more love, because it is how we heal. So, all right, my friends, I've been talking for almost 40 minutes now. And I just, it was just heavy on my heart to have this conversation with you. I hope that this helps somebody. And yeah, hopefully together we can learn how to be better for those who are hurting in our midst. Okay, friends, love you. Talk to you soon.